Today we'll be in Psalm 55, another plea for vindication from Christ's enemies. Psalm 55. Give ear to my prayer, O God, and do not hide yourself from my supplication. Attend to me and answer me. I believe this is clearly Christ and could, with certainty, be applied to his people. I am overcome by my trouble. I am distraught by the noise of the enemy. And we've come to understand that those enemies are the Pharisees. Because of the oppression of the wicked, that is, the oppression with their tongues as swords, biting and devouring words. For they bring trouble upon me, and in anger they cherish enmity against me. Jesus said, if you are not for me, you are against me. And that was the Pharisees. My heart is in anguish with me. The terrors of death have fallen upon me. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. So again, we're getting a clear picture of the thoughts of Christ. And again, that's what I like to tell people regarding the Psalms. The Gospels are the actual words of Christ. The Psalms are the thoughts of Christ. So the Gospels are the words of Christ during his ministry, and the Psalms, for the most part, are the thoughts of Christ during his ministry. Fear and trembling come upon me, and horror overwhelms me. And I say, oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. It seems to correspond with Christ saying, if it be possible, take this cup from me. Let me fly away from this moment. Nevertheless, not my will, but thine be done, Christ said. Oh, that I had wings like a dove, I would fly away and be at rest. Yes, I would wander afar. I would lodge in the wilderness. I would haste to find me a shelter from the raging wind and tempest. And I think that he could very well be talking either about the rage of his enemies or the raging wind and tempest of the wrath of God, Isaiah 53. Destroy their plans, O Lord, confuse their tongues. And that is, we see that God would use the very traps that they set against God's people on them. So confuse their tongues, and their tongues would be used against them. For I see violence and strife in the city. Day and night they go around it on its walls. And mischief and trouble are within it. This is the city of Jerusalem. Ruin is in its midst. Oppression and fraud do not depart from its marketplace. It is not an enemy who taunts me, then I could bear it. It is not an adversary who deals insolently with me, then I could hide from him. But it is you, my equal, my companion, my familiar friend. We used to hold sweet converse together. Within God's house we walked in fellowship. Let death come upon them. Let them go down to Sheol alive. Let them go away in terror into their graves. And it's very likely Christ speaking about Judas. But I call upon God, and the Lord will save me. Evening and morning and at noon I will utter my complaint and moan, and he will hear my voice. That is, raise me out of this death. Raise me out of this bearing sin and becoming sin for my people. He will deliver my soul in safety from the battle that I wage. God will give ear and humble them, he who is enthroned from of old, because they keep no law and do not fear God. My companion stretched out his hand against his friends. He violated his covenant. His speech was smoother than butter. And I think you could really see that with Judas, claiming to have concern for the poor. Yet war was in his heart. He would betray the Lord. His words were softer than oil, yet they were drawn swords. Judas was a Pharisee at heart. That's what he was. Cast your burden on the Lord, and he will sustain you. What's the burden? The burden of sin, Jesus said, take my yoke upon you. My burden is easy. My yoke is easy. My burden is light, he says. In other words, the burden of the law. He spoke to his children, the people of Israel. He will never permit the righteous to be moved. Now, we are righteous in Christ, and that is a testimony of the security of the believer. Because our righteousness is of Christ, we cannot be moved. It's not because of our performance or maintenance. But you, O God, will cast them down into the lowest pit. Men of blood and treachery. Again, words, biting, devouring words. Men of blood and treachery shall not live out half their days, but I will trust in you. Psalm 55 and the words of Christ.